Gonna get a walk back.
Yes.
That was for Jerry, but we didn't go
You know that he saw very quickly, you know, because I couldn't take the heat.
Read through the pages of the book that we're launching tonight. Whether it's in the poem about that famous haunting photograph of Sean O'Riordan, another Cork poet, or the poem about George Boole, the scientist who was resident here for many years, leaving Lichfield, or in a poem like Fires that commemorates the various burnings, mishaps, and kind of disasters that have befallen Cork over the centuries, over the past 100 years. But that's not to say that a Daw is a poet who is like in any way confined or limited by this town. Far from it. Like Kavanagh, his work is rooted in the local only to kind of rise up and engage with ideas of truly global or human significance. Whether it's the tragic decay of the body and the mind in a poem like Damn Alzheimer's, or poetic inspiration itself in a poem like The Watcher about the Muses, or even in a poem about Ballon Temple 1847 about the, which I think captures wonderfully the relentless, unstoppable movement of time. I know that many people here tonight, gathered here tonight, if I can use that, to celebrate the arrival of this new book. Many of you will have been, are still absorbing the recent loss of Patrick Galvin, who died last week. And I know this is an event that reverberated, with reverberations far beyond Cork, but it was one that struck Cork, and in particular, the little world of Cork writing with a particular force. And when I learned of Patrick Galvin's death last Tuesday, I got home from work and I found a copy of Daw's book, hot off the presses, waiting for me in the letterbox. And when I opened it, the first page was dedicated to Patrick Galvin and Mary Johnson, founders of the Munster Literature Centre. And of course, like a little shiver went up my spine when I saw that, you know, just a little coincidence. But I don't think it's out of order to say that something of Patrick Galvin's spirit or influence is to be found in this present volume that we're launching tonight. In particular, in some of Daw's acerbic, satirical verses, we see something of the cleansing anger that Galvin himself would have been proud of, you know, whether it's in a full frontal, brutal assault of a poem like Paedophile, or the lighter satire of a poem like Milan. But that's not to say that Daw is, you know, a very aggressive or angry writer. There's also great humour to be found in this work, and in particular, I really like The Music of Hurling with its depiction of a wasp in his Kilkenny jersey. And it would obviously have been very remiss of me to speak about Daw Harding without mentioning the great game of hurling, which I've had many conversations with him about over the years. Daw is one of the writers, one of the few writers, who writes about childhood, but isn't completely bogged down in the realm of anecdote and reminiscence. Instead, his poems about childhood manage to speak about childhood itself, about the terror and mystery of actually being a child. I'm speaking here about the poem about the bird, Our Lady of Lourdes, and the poems like Ahar, about which depict a very complex father and son relationship. I think they're wonderful pieces, ones that bring us back to the understanding or half understanding that childhood involves. But Daw not only writes about days gone by in the sense of lost youth. And if you get a chance, you should ask him about his first job, which was as an assistant to an organ tuner. It's a great story. It didn't make it into this book, but I'm sure he's saving it up for the next one. But Dahl not only writes about youth, but also about a city that has disappeared or dissolved or been abolished by the passage of time, by fire, by economics, or by simple stupidity. And I'm talking about a poem, like a great sturdy poem like The Cranes Are Up, which manages to capture in a few short lines and condenses the whole mystical, hubristic rise and fall of the Celtic Tiger, a wonderful piece. And also I'm talking about the title poem, My Stolen City, or the poem Little Athens, which describes the rottings left by carriages at the gates of what I take to be the north or south gate of this town. So, these are poems that steal us away to a city that has been abolished or lost, and allow us to enter once again a city that has been stolen away. Dáthar.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming. I can't do this ad-lib like Billy, because he's one of the great ad-lib artists in Cork. Especially those who've travelled from outside Cork and further afield, and those of you who had to climb over barriers, although the Queen has sent her apologies for any inconvenience. It's an honour to be here in this beautiful church, which the City Council, to their great credit, has restored to its former glory at an arm's expense, especially at a time when money for the arts and culture is beginning to be swallowed up by other priorities. In fact, the history of this site can be traced back 800 years and has links with Spenser and his famous poem, The Fairy Queen. It even has a connection with St. Paul's of London, as I noticed that a great-granddaughter of Sir Christopher Wren was laid to rest here in 1848. On a more personal note, a little story, but Billy alluded to it. Many years ago, I was apprenticed to a church organ tuner, and we worked on this beautiful organ right here. I'm not too sure if we ever got it tuned, because in the initial interview for the job, I forgot to mention to him that I was in fact tone deaf. I'd like to thank Dominic Taylor and the gang at Revival Press from Limerick for publishing My Stolen City. And it's fantastic that they brought the original painting that's depicted on the cover. For being here also on the night. Also thanks to Mary Johnson and the late lamented Paddy Galvin, who set me on the road, to Pat Cotter and the Munster Lit Centre, to Paul Casey and the crew at O'Vale, Des O'Grady, who unfortunately cannot be with us, to Matt Kedden, Billy Ramsey, Jean Barry, Joe Sweeney, and where else, I just can't remember right now. And especially to my daughter Julie, who is stuck in the airport right now, I think. She got delayed because of the Queen. She gave us unstintedly of her time and experience in the editing process, and I would have been lost without her help. So thanks, Julie, for seeing me. Thanks also to, last but not least, my wife, Nuala, who has put up with the Hardings, Maddens, Mr. Bright. Without her encouragement, I don't think I'd be standing here, so thanks, Nuala. I I'll read 5 short poems and no, the way to the pub then. First one is called The Cranes Are Up. The title comes from a headline I saw in the business section of the Examiner proclaiming the good news that the cranes are up. This was at the height of the so-called boom. It's on page 17 if anybody has a copy. I hope you have one.
The page is all over the same
17. The cranes are up. The cranes are up. How wonderful for the people. They will be happy. Hear the bottles pop. Take your sup. The cranes are up. The cranes are up. What a truly marvellous sight. All boats are lifted. All spirits too. The harvest's here. Look, what a crop. The cranes are up. The cranes are up. Dancing up and down South Mall. Milk and honey flows all around. Hold out your hand. Fill your cup. The cranes have flown. The cranes have flown. What long legs they had. What long necks. What big eyes they had. What big bills. Who'd have known they'd leave? Who'd have known? Page 27. This poem deals with what has become in recent years a very topical subject. Sadly, my family experienced the trauma of Alzheimer's when our beloved father, GF, as he was known to his friends, succumbed to this terrible disease. It's called damn Alzheimer's. We should have seen the signs, the odd socks, the frayed shirt collar, unsuited to one so immaculate. Once you held your head in your hands for an age and whispered to yourself, I am losing my mind. We thought you were only looking for notice, as your vet nurse suggested. It is sad that we two did not talk more. God knows when the dance tilted. The time you went next door, the only time, to Mrs. O'Sullivan's in your pyjamas, she thinking you were in the pantomime, and the gobbledygook, people assuming you were late with comic. God damn, we could still have talked. I remember the first footer you bought me, all leather and laces, and kicked to death by my new friends. For a short time, the envy of the gang. You probably hoping I would be the next Stanley Matthews. 30 years later, you were the one doing the dribbling. At page 22, it's called The All-Forgiving Wood. This was inspired by the great but almost forgotten Irish writer John Stuart Collis, who has written a number of classic books on nature and its effect on the environment, and he is well worth checking out. The All-Forgiving Wood. If trees are beings, why do we kill them? We make appointments with them, take advantage of their silence, admire them almost like a woman, plant them, paint them, pray to them, take shelter in their bosoms, talk to them, even though they exasperate us with their indifference. Each tree holds a wealthy truth, a time-locked secret, and while generous with their blessings, they will not answer. Neither will they tell us anything. Like the clouds, they hold authority, and still we kill them. We listen to the music of their leaves, even when the wind is only whispering, and know that God is talking to us. And when one dies of old age, it will keep us warm. And still we kill trees, so that books may be written about them. He who dishonours the oak, that mighty king, shall fall, and his ashes, that great misnomer, be scattered in a glorious, eternal, all-forgiving wood. Page 51, the music of Merlin. It's about a sport that has been my passion forever, and the title comes from a poem by the Limerick poet John Liddy, when he speaks of his father and the great Michael Hartnett going to hurling matches to watch the likes of McMahon and Christy Ring weave their magic on the playing fields of Limerick and Thurles and elsewhere. The first line of his poem, titled O Winged Bird, goes as follows: Our fathers knew each other in the music of hurling. So it's called the music of hurling. I heard the furious buzz of hurling hurtling on my window pane. A wasp, wearing his Kilkenny jersey, tapping the glass like a slitter on a boss. He tapped and buzzed for 60 seconds until my patience snapped, and then trapped him in a glass before releasing him with a flick of the wrist into the brilliant sunshine. And surviving the brutal toss, he revived immediately with something in his fist, a slitter probably, but I could not see his venom for one last strike, making his final point as usual, and me wishing he would miss. Page 21. This last poem is another one from the boom situation. Our family are very fortunate to have connections with a very beautiful part of the county near Kinsale, overlooking the sea. A few years ago, a conglomerate of business people, business types, nosed it out, and with the help of politicians and others, succeeded in acquiring permission to build a ghastly hotel and a couple of hundred houses on a headland that rivals some of the best West Kerry jewels. Something had to be done, and my older brother, Tom Hardy, took it upon himself to go to the High Court and challenge the legality of these shenanigans. The case was duly lost, and he then was extremely brave enough to venture to the Supreme Court, where unfortunately he also came up against a brick wall. Finally, the people resorted to An Borcanala, and lo and behold, all our hopes and endeavours bore fruit, and the whole god-awful plan was consigned to Hades. This poem is called No One Came. I had anticipated the wasted landscape, the crying fields and bleeding trees, cathedrals of ancient earth and worms exposed but once to freeze forever. I had anticipated the dead stumps of the old trees oozing out their history that no one could read, their rings now wrinkles clogging gumless roots. I had anticipated the red ants turning black and the black ants turning red with rage, the rooks and ravens and choughs attacking a la Hitchcock, my safe house. I had anticipated 21st bridal puppets perverting across the fields, dancing with their devils, mocking all, and roasting the last cocksure cock pheasant. I had anticipated my resignation, my succumbing to the political train, ploughing through the landscape like an electric drill biting my temple. I had anticipated the Stantism, ring-force levelled, vultures with their bent periscope necks falling on the dead and anything that died before the heart stopped beating. I had not anticipated the letter from the inspector, her peregrine eye executing the line reams of paper stamped with ink blood black in its sentence. Now I anticipate nothing. God lives in my house. The sun spears in my windows. The fields are waving. Over the valleys, the rooks are revelling, dancing with the choughs, laughing at the ravens. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. It was extremely enjoyable. Well done, George, and thank you, Billy. Just a word. As I said, many of you have never been in this building before, and when we had the official handover by City Hall, it was Peter Fleming and Dean Morris from Weddings with Frank who did the setup, and it's a great tribute to George that they did it for him tonight. After spending the day working and probably weeks working on the market for the Queen, they stayed on to do this for George. So well done, Peter and Nadine. So I think there's a couple of bottles of wine left and a few books, so enjoy the evening. Thanks again.
I got one for myself and one for Michael. Yeah. I got the sign for Michael too. So, maybe next week, Jeremy. Hopefully.